Hello students. I just wanted to touch base real quick with you guys as we're finishing up the course. This is the next to last module, Module 4, and hopefully by now you kind of have an idea about how to design curriculum, put it in an LMS, and just create experiences for your students that will not only take them from point A to point B, but also create an environment for them to learn to interact on a digital platform in an ethical way. One of the things that we've talked about in this class several times is accessibility. Making sure that all of our online content is accessible for each person is so important. Anytime we are in a society that has people of different abilities, disabilities, race, gender, sexual orientation, ethnicities, language capabilities, we have to make sure that online learning is a place where all of those people can come and leave with something that has helped them or has just improved their life in some way, and certainly not created an environment that has caused their life to be more stressful or has taken away some of those rights in some way. So one of the things I wanted to show you guys today, just real quick, is something called the Educator's Code of Ethics. So if you're a teacher in Texas, especially in a public school, or in an educator preparation program, anything like that, you are expected to follow this code of ethics. I'm expected to follow this code of ethics. This code of ethics is kind of something that is a standard for our field, for the profession, that says, hey, these are things that you've got to do. These are things that must guide your interactions with students. One thing I want y'all to look at is there's three different parts. There's the standards part, which basically kind of just talks about things that are legal, illegal, things that kind of are legal and kind of are illegal, and that ethics should drive you on. One of them, for example, Standard 1.6. The educator shall not falsify records or direct or coerce others to do so. This, to me, it doesn't sound like a big deal, right? I'm not going to falsify anything for my class or something that has to do with like a student grade or anything like that. That seems pretty easy. Well, what doesn't seem easy is when it comes down to things like designing curriculum. When you design curriculum, you have to make choices about your sources. You have to make sure that your sources that you use in your class have not presented anything in a false way, are not fake news, are not presenting a deceptive perception of a topic or an idea. So it's very important to make sure that your sources follow the code of ethics. We don't want anything to be falsified in our courses. We want to have integrity. We want to know that our content is accurate. Threats of violence. I know this may seem easy, right? I'm certainly not going to threaten anybody with violence, either in my class or on, in person. However, when we are using sources or information about people who encourage violence against others or who encourage statements of violence towards groups of people, ethnicities, races, genders, anything like that, it is a violation of the Code of Ethics. We have to be sure that the people that we put in our courses, the quotes we use, the videos, they are not associated with people who are trying to incite violence against people. You never know if a parent is going to be a member of a certain religious group or political group. You do not want to be part of the crowd that is saying things that could incite violence towards groups. Like I said, ethics sounds easy. It's really not once you get down to it. You don't want to support candidates, political candidates, or legislation that incites violence or threatens violence against a group of people. Recently, there was some Texas legislation that passed, or that did not pass, thankfully. It was in a committee that said if a woman gets an abortion, then she should get the death penalty. Well, of course, the death penalty is violence, and how many students, school board members, employees, parents have had an abortion. Well, is that the type of legislation you want to come out on social media or in your digital online environments as supporting when you're adhering to the code of ethics? Well, obviously not. Things like that you just have to think through, because there will always be a person in your class, a parent, school board members, and another employee around you that falls into the categories that you may or may not support. So you have to be very careful about how you treat people. One of the things we have ethical conduct towards colleagues. You don't want to get in an online class and have other students come in and be like, hey, so-and-so teacher that teaches with you, they're a terrible teacher. They make me do all this work and I don't like their class, blah, blah, blah. And they're posting this on a discussion board and you're like, no. It's important that we treat each other ethically as professionals. You can't discriminate. You can't make discriminatory statements in your classes. It is very important that all of your content and your discussions and your assignments are respectful towards everyone. That means when it comes to certain things, you may want to leave them out. It's really difficult to say, well, my curriculum doesn't include anything about race, color, religion, national origin, age, gender, disability, family status, or sexual orientation. All curriculum contains all of those things. It naturally does because of the way that curriculum is created. We put parts of ourselves in there. That's just the way it is. So it's very important that we go back through and say, okay, is this favoring a certain group? Is it discriminating against a certain group? It's very important when you're creating online learning that you make sure your interactions with your students are respectful. I have heard many a teacher go up to a student and be like, man, that was, why did you do it like that? That's not right. Or say something like, there's so much of a better way to do it. So while those things don't seem like bad things to say, I'm not saying the student's work is terrible, or I'm not saying the student is terrible. Is it recklessly treating the student in a manner that could adversely affect or endanger their learning, physical health, mental health, or safety? Anytime you talk down to a student, anytime you demean a student, you are impacting their ability to learn in their class. It is so important that teachers always treat students with respect. There is no teacher-student authority ladder where one is different from the other. All of us as humans are equals. Teachers must treat their students as equals in order to promote their learning. You can't misrepresent facts regarding a student. Telling a story to a colleague where you kind of over-exaggerate some of the facts or the way that the student did things. That's misrepresenting facts. Don't do it. Be truthful, be honest, be accurate. Of course, there's things like don't provide your students with drugs, don't have sex with your students, things like that. Students are not available as romantic partners. Just remember that. These things, which seem easy, often start with something very small, like an email, or a text message, or a Snapchat, or an Instagram post. I will not say nobody, very few people that get into relationships with their students start their career by saying, oh man, next year it's my goal to be in a relationship with one of my students. That's not usually what happens. It's just a series of unethical decisions. So holding yourself to a high ethical standard, especially in digital learning, is super important. So the things that we talk about in this class, this is what a lot of the ethics and the diversity and inclusion is based on. Just having a basic respect for students as humans and making sure they're learning in an environment that respects their rights as humans, their rights as Americans and their rights as students in your class. Good luck!